a crazed transgender maniac attempted to kill as many Christians attending a church service as possible, and was only prevented from doing so because 2 off-duty police officers were armed security guards there and shot her before she could kill innocent Christians. That's the story. Over the weekend, there was a shooting in Houston. It took place at the church, the Lakewood Church of Joel Osteen, the very popular television evangelist. And I'm wondering if you saw anything about it, because it sure didn't get much coverage. I mean, you would think in Texas, Texas, all those right-wing, crazy Republican, conservative, gun-toting, gun-loving Americans at a church, right? Joel Osteen's church, and there's a mass shooting. Why didn't you hear much about it? Well, we turn now to the chief of the Houston police, who will tell you exactly why you didn't hear anything about it.
So approximately at 1:53 p.m., a female, approximately 30, 35 years old, entered the property on the west side here in the parking lot of Lakewood Church. She entered the building. She was armed with a long rifle and a trench coat with a backpack, accompanied by a small child, approximately 4 to 5 years old. Once she entered, at some point she began to fire. I want to compliment the off-duty officers who were working extra employment here. One TABC agent, 4 years of service, 38 years old. An HPD off-duty officer, 28 years old, 2 years of service. Both officers, the officer and agent, engaged, striking the female. She's deceased here on the scene. Unfortunately, the 5-year-old kid was hit and is in critical condition at our local hospital. There was a 57-year-old man who didn't have anything to do with it, I don't think, was shot in the leg. He's seeking treatment in the hospital. So let's all pray for each and every one of them. Once she went down, officers reported back to us that she threatened, that she had a bomb. So we searched her vehicle, our bomb squad, and also the backpack. No explosives were found, but she was also spraying some type of substance on the ground. So HFD came, and the fire chief would speak briefly on that. But again, we're going to stand strong.
All right. Yeah, an unbelievable story out of Houston there. This is Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church. And again, as the police chief just painted the picture, a woman walks in, trench coat, backpack, rifle, and using a 5-year-old child as basically a human shield, starts shooting. And 2 off-duty police officers making some extra coin there on the side as armed security guards at the church immediately engage the shooter, defend all of the innocent people at the church, and they shoot this maniac dead. 2 good guys with guns stop the bad guy with the gun. This church, Joel Osteen's Lakeside Church, not a gun-free zone. Good guys can have guns there in Texas to defend the place, and they did. And that's why you didn't hear much about this. That's a big part of why you didn't hear much about this. Why don't we want this in our schools? Off-duty cops, retired military, give them a job, give them a purpose, protect the children. Not only will this end mass shootings in schools before they even happen, I bet. As soon as we announce that this is now the public policy in government-run schools, these shootings will stop. Nobody's going to want to try this. So that's a big part of why you haven't heard anything about this story. A huge part. Number one, because thankfully, innocent people weren't killed by this crazed maniac. But number two, because the narrative is if you've got trained people with guns in a soft target like this, they will stop the horrible event from happening, or at least prevent the horrible event from getting Too horrible. That's part of why you're not hearing about this story, because good guys with guns actually came out the heroes. But there's also another reason why you haven't heard it. You just heard the description of the murderer or the attempted murderer, a woman in a trench coat with a backpack and a rifle. Well, now we have a reporter from KHOU down there delving into this shooter and finding out more information about the background. And you can see, per law enforcement records, Moreno, that's the last name of the person, also had identified as Jeffrey Escalante in the past and had prior arrests for assault, forgery, marijuana possession, theft, evading, and unlawful carrying weapon. Well, hold on a minute. You just heard from the police chief that this was a woman. But this woman was identifying as Jeffrey Escalante? Are you telling me? Yeah, that's exactly what they're telling you. This was a trans individual, apparently. Sarah Gonzalez, also down there in Texas, got the mug sheet on this person. Identified as transgender, went by the name Jeffrey, but the legal name is Genesee Moreno. You can see right there, Jeffrey Escalante Moreno is the booking ID. Various different names here, but there's the picture of Jeffrey. And you can see sex identified as female. If you keep going, we found other pictures here, or I should say Sarah Gonzalez found other mugshots and pictures of this person. That's what Jeffrey looked like for many of Jeffrey's arrests. But Jeffrey clearly is a woman and identified as a man. Genesee identified as Jeffrey. So this is a transgender individual who now has taken on a violent rampage and attempted to kill as many people as possible. And you heard, as she was lying, bleeding out on the floor, claimed that she had a bomb so she could blow up as many innocent people at this church as well, which was a bluff. She didn't have a bomb. But you've got... why haven't you seen this on cable news? Why haven't you seen this story on broadcast news? Why haven't you seen this in the New York Times or the Washington Post? Let's reaffirm exactly what we're talking about here. A crazed transgender maniac attempted to kill as many Christians attending a church service as possible and was only prevented from doing so because 2 off-duty police officers were armed security guards there and shot her before she could kill innocent Christians. That's the story, and that's the last thing the mainstream media wants you to see. And our friends over at Libs of TikTok did a quick breakdown here because just in the last year and a half, we've had mass shooting events perpetrated by transgendered individuals. Colorado Springs shooter identified as non-binary. Nashville school shooter identified as trans. The Aberdeen shooter identified as trans. The Denver school shooter identified as trans. Iowa school shooter, transgender fluid. And now the Lakewood church shooter identified as trans. Those stories, those mass shooting events all have 2 things in common, actually. The assailant was transgender or gender fluid or non-binary. That's one thing they had in common. The second thing, the story disappeared after just a few hours of coverage. We didn't get the ongoing hand-wringing, oh, we've got to have more, oh, we're going to have a panel discussion about it later tonight. We're going to have doctors and scientists come in and explain about this mass shooting epidemic that we've got in this country. We've got to have calls for more, precautions and look out for these people or those people. No, because they only have that analysis and they only have that hand-wringing and we only have that outrage on mainstream media when the murderer can be identified as a white male, usually Christian. Oftentimes they do whatever they can to figure out what the voting record was, so it can be a white Christian conservative male. Then they've got, then they're hitting for the cycle. And then you see story after story after story after story. Because as you know, the most dangerous domestic terrorist we've got is a white male conservative, usually racist, but that just sort of gets baked into the cake, right? They don't even have to say racist anymore. Of course. That's the coverage you would normally see. But for these multiple instances just in the last year and a half of mass shooting events perpetrated by a transgender individual, the story goes away. Nothing to see here. There's nothing in common. There's no concerns. I mean, maybe, just maybe, somebody who is so uncomfortable in their own skin and the own body that God gave them, that they want to identify as the opposite sex, that they want to change their clothing, change their appearance, change their name, change their identity, in some cases even use pharmaceuticals or surgery to physically alter their body and lop off perfectly healthy sexual organs, or take pharmaceuticals to completely rearrange internally their body. Maybe people who will go to those great lengths and do all of those things, they might have some psychological issues that deserve some attention. Maybe those people have a lot going on there inside their head that then leads them to do something horrible and radical like this. But no, we're told if you don't affirm and you don't go along with them, you're going to force them into suicide. Maybe somebody who's that mentally fragile is also on the brink of a mass murder. Maybe we as a society better start looking at these things a little more seriously.